Hello there, Commonwealth from here. Everything including the title reveal, better open world, Ouroboros logo, gameplay and dungeon hope has been covered by us, so what should we cover next? Right, the thing that brings it all together. Story or the main quest, since Breath of the Wilds needed better structure and presentation instead of fragmentation. So let's not waste any time, just be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press the notification bell if you haven't already. Goal 3000 likes, and let's get inside Tears of the Kingdom's better story. Breath of the Wild's story / main quest in the present was one giant run from the darkness of the Shrine of Resurrection on the Great Plateau to the return of the light of Zelda. At no point in the game was there a turning point, plot twist and low point while moving around as Link, well when we controlled him, as all had transpired over 100 years ago. Hence Tears of the Kingdom's story need to have both more dark and light elements to it in the present. Balance or fluctuation in the now while we play, since there have to be ups and downs throughout such a dangerous quest with a bigger threat than ever and a new companion that we don't really know the position of. Yes, much like the Princess of Twilight Midna, who might or might not be the ancestor of the Zona. A question that needs to be answered throughout this story. And this balance and fluctuation will be very fitting to the whole tree layer or tier approach to this title, with a dark underground of malice, mid-surface of all kinds of landscapes, and bright sky of divine floating islands. Though with that being said, even this top layer gets dark during the night. After all, we all need sunlight, but let's be honest, this game starts optimistically with Link and Zelda together and then literally turns at 180 by punching you straight down and at the very least separating Zelda from her love, most likely before you are even able to move Link with your analog stick. That is unless the section before the Uncrowned Majesty's fall does contain some gameplay. You know, just like in Majora's Mask before you fell down that tree trunk. If not, then it serves as a great reminder that what was sufficient up to this point will not do against Ganondorf and his full power. That is to say, malice. Much like in the distant past, and before that again in the few 3D Zelda games where he has appeared under that name and not just as Ganon. That is the key takeaway here, that we can never forget when bringing up the Zona, as Ganondorf is the incarnation of the hatred you know when the first Demon King had the last laugh, knowing that the mortal bloodline of Hylia was cursed for infinity. Yes, this is a story of the distant past, and how to break this curse of all time. But at the same time, it is also a story of the present, of the Link that remembers Zelda at the end of Breath of the Wild and spent some time with her before ending up in the Zona Ganondorf's sealing chamber. A story about the Master Sword and its spirit, which was in a strong state in that cave, but not strong enough any longer. Since remember, Ganondorf is where the malice spreads from. He's the master, not the puppet that Link and Zelda dealt with on the surface. The true boss who nearly succeeded in taking out both Link and Zelda after breaking free for who knows how long of imprisonment. Hence the horror of the broken Master Sword and the need for a literal helping hand, at least for Link, to move on since Princess Zelda might have returned to Hylia. Enter the spiritual Zona, a tribe which naturally already was present through the intro underground section, but now opens their greatest secret to the current incarnation of the immortal spirit of the hero, the Sky Islands, floating new land above Hyrule where hope for the fallen can be found and the restoration of the kingdom of the surface and the heavens can begin. All in the name of creating a further path for Link as the fallen rocks return back to the sky where his tears fell down from, and to which Link will also return to in the form of a tear. Yes, there are many metaphors for the title of this game. A place where he will likely repair or more and more likely combine and alter the damaged Master Sword, while at the same time gradually carving a way through the storms, malice and eventually the elevated castle, or more specifically Ganondorf's fortress of malice. No doubt, this is a game that will have its ups and downs that take place in the present, as Breath of the Wild had its moments of shock, but only in non-playable cutscenes set 100 years ago, not in a gameplay setting. This time, the story will hopefully be different, as it should be told in the now, outside of old hieroglyphics and perhaps very few memories from the distant past. And even these should provide a good balance, and scenes where Link and Zelda are not present cannot dominate the animated story. Memories from a time when both this Link and Zelda were not born. Hence, they should only be an optional supplement to the story, not the main quest itself, since we want to be engaged as the character we play as. In other words, Tears of the Kingdom has no other option, but in majority of its scenes to offer something that Breath of the Wild didn't in its story. Action and a dynamic narrative here and now, and also far more voiced characters. A better flow which continues when the non-playable cutscene turns into gameplay. What do we mean by that? That the story is not set in stone since we are still playing it. And this doesn't matter whether the story changes from dark and light and back to dark again, or life, death and life again. But it really depends whether these hieroglyphics are more of an overarching prophecy, where we get some hints of what is about to happen, but where most have still not been determined and we haven't seen the consequences of yet. And the reason for this is simple, they are still to be made. Just as it was said in Kung Fu Panda, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but the present is ours for the taking. That is why it's called present. Besides, the Zelda team knows that a plot twist here and now is the perfect way to make the story evolve as we play in it. Just like what was the case with the gameplay in Breath of the Wild, and where we're still discovering new stuff nearly 6 years after the release of the game. And all that we have mentioned so far is in fact how little that Tears of the Kingdom needs to do in its storytelling to have a better plot than Breath of the Wild, combining the best of the past with the additions of the present. And address the game where there was not a single kidnapping in the present, no real or lasting setback for any of the characters, or even friendly NPCs for that matter, and the list goes on and on. Fact is that even with its story high points in Skyward Sword and Majora's Mask and The Wind Waker, the Legend of Zelda series has never been a narrative masterpiece franchise. Since even at its most linear, this is a franchise that has always set gameplay over story. And the reason is quite simple, as Skyward Sword demonstrated how restrictive linear storytelling can get. But there are other ways to tell a linear story, just like we have seen in the Witcher series in the past. Thus, what Tears of the Kingdom needs in its story to succeed are certain story checkpoints. Or if you prefer The Witcher or the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet approach, where the story is there waiting for you, but where you have to complete certain objectives first. Definitely not hide it away in hard to find places during your first playthrough, which Breath of the Wild did, and with the consequence that many didn't even see the full story and what goes with it, the true ending of the game. There needs to be a red thread, though a loose one, but still a thread instead of a patchwork of cutscenes that you can easily end up locating and watching in a non-linear order, resulting like in the case of Breath of the Wild in a far from pleasant plotline experience. Tears of the Kingdom, which is hinting towards a return to the origins of the franchise or the timeline with Skyward Sword Skyloft up in the sky, the nature and story of the Master Sword and the spirit within it, Hylia's relation to Zelda, a long-gone tribe which might date back all the way to the right after Skyward Sword if they are descendants of the interlopers and so on, plus Ganondorf's return, can simply not be optional. There's just too much important things that have to be addressed and seen by absolutely everyone. And this is the big point of this entire video. We need a story where everything is experienced by every player before we are able to see the end credits. A world filled with gameplay possibilities, but equally as many story possibilities that should under no circumstances be wasted in order to just be another Zelda sandbox. No, there should be meaning and depth to it. Hence I believe the falling effing rocks, or one of the many metaphors for tears in Tears of the Kingdom, could serve a more linear experience, including for story. But how? Well, imagine that you jump on one of these rocks, time reverse it up and end up in the sky. You reach a special place where a cutscene is triggered, which then reveals another piece of the puzzle, while also opening a new part of the sky as we're uniting the missing pieces that might bridge several of these islands together. All while telling a story in 3 layers: surface, sky, and yes, underground, since these tunnels hide mysteries and stories. And since we're on the topic of underground, I'll be completely honest. Tossing away Princess Zelda, and by that I mean leaving her dead at the very beginning of the game without any spoken role later on and leaving us with the mute Link, will not exactly help the story in this game after the opening. With that being said, there are some roadblocks even present in the box art, which is positive, as these create story possibilities in the 7 provinces surrounding central Hyrule and Hyrule Castle, which is naturally Ganondorf's and his minions' territory. But that might also be our hint as to how the Zelda team plans to tell this story, through 4 sections to dispel these barriers and by bringing boulders back where they belong in the sky. And this is the point. Crafting the plot for this game across this 3-layer open world is a much bigger challenge than altering the world or adding new gameplay possibilities. Naturally, not from a technical perspective, but rather from a narrative one. Since Tears of the Kingdom is culminating all of these part storylines, that Breath of the Wild refused to tell anything in cutscenes beyond the events 100 years ago and the ancient battle 10,000 years ago through the Sheikah tapestry. This might be a very subjective take, but this is one that is the key to nailing the two aims of this 20th Zelda game: combinations and duality. We need both solid gameplay as seen in Breath of the Wild and story found in Skyward Sword, two polar opposites that are probably the reason why the Zelda team is taking over 6 years from the release of Breath of the Wild to bring Tears of the Kingdom to our tables for its May 12th release date. A story with a solid opening, followed by an intriguing first act, leading to growing stakes, a plot twist in its midpoint, overcoming this one, and then building towards the climax. Giving up on a good story structure was the Breath of the Wild way of doing things. Tears of the Kingdom, however, needs, as we have highlighted in past videos, to combine the best of Zelda's linear past with its non-linear present. A theme of past and present that we already see clearly represented through all of the marketing of this game, and one that needs to culminate in the climax that has been building up for this trilogy of Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and in a way throughout all of the 20 Zelda games, the trio that has been there since 1986. And with Demise, Hylia and a chosen hero since 2011, an immense potential of story and gameplay, which if carried out correctly, following the 3 or actually 4 primary colors of the franchise, that is to say those with the story in this game, what the gameplay did for Breath of the Wild, will secure Tears of the Kingdom the Game of the Year award of 2023 across the board. Not only that, as the best Zelda game, if not even video game of all time, as it doesn't downplay anything of the key elements of the action-adventure genre. And on that note, I invite all of you to join a massive story, or if you prefer plot and story structure and presentation discussion, below in the comments. Now all that remains for me is, if you haven't already, to ask you to leave a like, subscribe and press the notification bell, as we will be covering Tears of the Kingdom at the very least weekly up to its release and long after. A big thanks goes to you for watching, and to all our patreon.com/Comeralm patrons, and in particular our role producer Charles Shush. You rock, and please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.